Austin and then to Nashville for a couple of days with the council. And it was a hell of a journey there and back, so I appreciate that a lot of you will be very, very tired and wanting to get some rest before you go up to the Culterland and get a feed tonight. But listen, I have a couple of people here from the Short Strand community who some of you I'm sure will know. I know some of you have been here before. Niall O Donnghaile, who works with the Short Strand Partnership Board. Mairead's brother, Joe, was a predecessor of mine. He was a former Sinn Féin councillor in this area, but he only ever got the Deputy Lord Mayor. He never reached the top office. I beat him where that was concerned. Patricia Johnson, who's at this table, Patricia is the director of the Short Strand Partnership Board. The Partnership Board is the organisation. It's a multi-statutory, cross-party organisation, a board which I also sit on, that lobbies around economic regeneration, environmental improvements, and investment into the local area. Bernie McConnell is our senior community worker here in the Short Strand. She wouldn't want me to tell you how long she's been working in the community sector here in this area, but it's been a very long time, and it's been a very, very good time, certainly for us as a community. She's worked very, very hard over the years and continues to do so. Is Huggy McComb still here? Or has he left? He had to leave. Huggy McComb was here. He may drift back. Huggy's a lifelong Republican activist in the area. He's a former political prisoner. He now works with CRJ Ireland, an organisation, a restorative justice programme, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar. So hopefully he'll get to stick his head back in as well. Joe, who's taking a photograph, Joe is one of our youth volunteers in the area, so he works with the young people. And Brendy's the boss. Brendy's just coming in here to be nosy. So keep your eye on Brendy. Watch him. Guys, listen.
Now, excuse me.
Yep.
I have to correct you. There's no saying in Ireland, behind every good woman there's a good man. So this is Tommy, and he's my
Tommy,
husband.
how can I forget? Tommy, believe it or not, I didn't see you.
A bit of a stretch. Alrighty then.
I'll not forget you again, I promise.
About that vote.
That's my next election lost because of that mistake. Guys, listen, because of all of that, I'm going to keep it very, very brief. And I'm sure some of you have already told me you have been following things in the Strand carefully over the past couple of months. And I appreciate that, because sometimes for us, despite knowing there's a lot of support out there here in Ireland and across the world, sometimes it can get very, very frustrating. Sometimes it can get very, very difficult for us when we're going through what we're going through. But just to take us back to the beginning of this latest bout of trouble and violence and everything else. Some of you came to visit me in the City Hall in last year, and I spoke to you about some of the changes that were coming about in City Hall, some of what we had achieved and some that were coming down the line. And I'm almost certain I mentioned the flag and what was going to happen with the flag. And that came to pass. On the 3rd of December, Belfast City Council took a democratic decision that they would fly the Union flag from the building on what's called designated days, 17 days a year. Our position in Sinn Féin was and remains that in relation to the flag, it should be neutrality or equality. That is, it should be no flag or two flags. Because the demographics of Belfast have changed significantly in the last number of years, and communities like ours and the culture and the tradition and the background that we come from, by and large, aren't yet reflected in the City Hall. So we want to get to a time where our tradition and our, I suppose, our allegiance and our nationality is reflected in the City Hall. The decision to fly on designated days, because of the nature of the council, the Alliance Party still hold the balance of power. So while Sinn Féin are the biggest party, we still don't have enough seats to determine an overall majority. So that rests with the Alliance Party. The Alliance Party put forward a compromise proposal that instead of flying the flag 365 days a year, or indeed instead of taking it down completely, which was our position, they would go for the route of designated days. Now, as I said to you, that's not our position. But nevertheless, as a party, as a group at the City Hall, we made a very, very conscious decision that on our part would be a strategic compromise. That in order, sometimes steps aren't always as big as you would want them to be, but they're steps forward nevertheless. So the impact because Belfast City Hall, for those of you who have been in it, is still very much a symbol of a previous time. And for many, the notion that the flag would be coming down from the City Hall had a very profound impact on them and their notion of the Union and Belfast's place within the Union and what that would mean. Since then, on that night, there was protests at the City Hall. That turned into violence. Since then, really, for a period of 3 months, this community had to endure almost nightly roadblocks in and around the area, illegal roadblocks at that, by and large facilitated by the police. They were illegal. It is illegal, despite what some of the legal eagles and jargon and media spin will tell you. It is illegal to go out and block a road. We know that because we've done it over a long number of years, and we're dealt with accordingly by the PSNI and before them the RUC. So we knew better than most that when the police were telling us there were legal issues around here that maybe just couldn't go in, it wasn't as black and white as that. We knew it was, and we knew if the will was there, then they could do it. So that happened. Every week and every full council meeting, the full council meets on the first working day of the month. So the council meeting in December, January and February, coupled with every Saturday afternoon, there was 2 illegal parades from East Belfast, past the Short Strand, into the City Hall, and then returned to the Short Strand and back into East Belfast. So that meant for a period of 3 months, this community was enduring 2 illegal parades every single Saturday afternoon. That brought with it a large-scale policing operation. That brought with it the effect of shutting down of this community. People weren't able to get in, or were certainly uncomfortable or unwilling to get into the city centre to do what we all do on a Saturday afternoon. That is to go in and get your shopping, take the kids for something to eat, take them to play football, do whatever normal people do on a Saturday afternoon. So for 3 months, right over the period of Christmas shopping, all of that stuff was affected. We are heading into the summer months and we don't know what's down the lane. Obviously the implications of this stuff is that senior figures within the Orange Order have already said that they're going to consider not applying for their parades in the summer months, therefore deeming them illegal, and therefore bringing with that all of the potential negativity as well. The people behind a lot of this stuff it's been a whole sort of cabal, it's been a whole mixture, and I'll talk about that briefly. It's been elements of the UVF in East Belfast, the Ulster Volunteer Force, who at the minute the UVF as an organisation is fractured in many, many different ways. The 2 people who lead the UVF in East Belfast are 2 drug pushers. One of them is out on bail at the minute, having been arrested with £30,000 worth of cocaine in his own car. So how and why he wasn't arrested in terms of for simply a breach of his bail conditions, I leave you all to guess. The reason is why he wasn't arrested. The other fella himself is another known drug pusher as well. You had elements of the British National Party travelling from England and Scotland. The British National Party are a far-right fascist organisation, mainly concentrated in certain pockets in England and Scotland, but with long-standing links to loyalist paramilitaries here in the north of Ireland. Then you also had the headbangers of this world, people like Willie Fraser, Jamie Bryson, people who sort of promised to be the newfound saviours of working class loyalism, both of whom are now out on bail as well, having finally been arrested for organising and taking part in the illegal parades. Coupled with all of that, and I would say this, I mean, the other people around the room are free to jump in at any time. We as a community have been through this before. We've been through it, going back generations. This is one of the oldest communities in Belfast, and from its inception it has been, or at least loyalism and unionism has tried to make this community its whipping boy when things aren't going their way. But we have always come through that. We've always stood together. We've always organised. We have always defended ourselves, and we have always, asserted the injustices that are inflicted on this community, and I think that's important as well. We've had people into the area from the Irish government, and we have put a particular emphasis on the Irish government. They need to have representatives in this area when the illegal periods were passing. They needed to be conscious of what was happening. They needed to be listening to community workers and their experiences. They needed to be listening to the ordinary people as well. We've had senior figures from Sinn Féin have been into the community regular. They've been helping. They've been helping us in terms of the day-to-day stuff of if there is violence or an attack on the community. You know, that's not just something you see on a video. That's people who have to live with the fallout of that. That's the impact on their mental health, their emotional well-being. The very fact that they have windows broken, how do they claim that back? Do they claim it off their insurance? Do they get compensation? All of that stuff is the nitty-gritty. Do they want to stay there? Do they want to move house? How do they go about doing that? And also just the fear that's generated as a result. Because we have come through a good lot of years of relative stability, and there's kids now here who haven't seen this kind of stuff, who don't know it, who find it very, very strange. And you know, there's a job of work for youth leaders in the community to talk to them and to tell them not to be getting caught up in any kind of reactive response to this stuff, that this isn't their thing. This is an issue within loyalism, within unionism. It's a lot of it is as a result of the abject failure of political leaders within unionism to deal with it. And the last thing this community wants or needs is to be drawn into that kind of conflict around a flag. You know, we're doing what we're doing. We're making changes. We keep making changes. The last thing we want is for young people in this community to be getting hurt, to be getting arrested. And it's frustrating, it's hard. And that's why I think we're so lucky in the Short Strand that we have people like the people in this room who will go out and put their feet on the street and put their own safety and well-being at risk to try and assist their community. And that's something that we have, and we're very lucky to have in abundance. But it's not always easy. So I mean, I appreciate I'm throwing quite a bit at you, sir. I know there's quite a lot happening. The other important thing to say is that despite, you know, the elements that I've talked about in East Belfast, within loyalism, within the UVF, you know, despite the fact that Peter Robinson, the First Minister, who is also an elected representative for this constituency, has not said not one word about the attacks on this community, about the illegal parades, about, in the summer, the Loyal Order band parades, one bandsman being photographed by the Irish News on the front page, urinating on the gates of St Matthew's Chapel. In this community, didn't say a word about that, and therefore that creates and fosters that notion that it's okay. It's only the Short Strand. You know, we can go and attack the Short Strand because they don't really matter. You know, because nobody is within unionism or within loyalism is speaking up to say, hold on, that's wrong. And there's people there, there's a community there. Having said that, and that's the important point I wanted to make, you know, people in this room have continued to work at a cross-community level, to try and build relations, to try and keep the good, positive relations that we've had going back a long time, try and keep them there, and not allow some of these other characters to undermine that work. Because for me, as an elected representative, that's vitally important. For me as an Irish Republican, that's vital. That has to happen. We'll have to reach out to unionism, we'll have to reach out to loyalism, we'll have to convince them that this journey we're on involves them, and that the final destination, which we're going to be at eventually, that there's a place for them within that as well. There was this whole notion at the time, just to sort of digress a wee bit, when the whole controversy around the flag was coming up, and it was, will they take it down, will they leave it up, will they not? There was this whole suggestion, well, maybe we could come up with an alternative flag. Maybe somebody could think of a flag that, you know, is new and represents everyone and reflects all of the traditions. And I remember speaking to a unionist in City Hall and saying, he said to me sort of, because despite their bluster in the media, you know, they'll talk in a quiet corner or corridor of City Hall somewhere. One of them said to me, what do you think of this idea of a new flag? Do you think that could be a goer? And I says, well, what do you mean? He says, well, they're talking here in the media about having a flag that represents everybody. And I says, right, well, what about this? I says, what about we get a flag that has green for me, it has orange for you, and has white in between as representatives. Alright, does that sound like it could be a goer? And it wasn't a goer. It wasn't a goer. And but I mean, I'm confident we'll get there, because it has to happen. I mean, Belfast, the demographics of Belfast has changed. I mean, other people in the room can reflect on it more than me. I mean, I'm 27 years of age, but I'm still at an age where I can remember having to go into the city centre, and if you were wearing, you couldn't wear an Ireland football jersey, you couldn't wear a Celtic Football Club jersey, you couldn't assert, you know, your own identity, your own culture, and that's changed dramatically, and that's going to keep changing. And there's all these new cultures coming into Belfast all the time, which I think adds a really, really good wealth to the city as well, of great, great benefit. And having said all that, there also has to be a place for people who are unionists. There also has to be a place for people who are British. And that's fair enough. But the notion or the argument from them that their culture is being eroded or their culture is being attacked simply isn't true. People shouldn't fear equality, because equality hurts no one. Equality is, by definition, for all of us. And I mean, you have been to City Hall. You know, many of you have been to City Hall. There's no way. A guy from council, a civil servant, said to me the other day he would do a lot of work with loyalist, grassroots loyalist organisations. And he said, he was very blunt and he was very direct. And he's actually from the south. He's from Wicklow, Kildare. Where's Davy from? Bernie, do you know David Robinson? Can't remember. He's from the south anyway. And he has a big, broad, sort of thick brogue, you know. And he said, "Now, how are we going to convince loyalists that we're not attacking their culture? We're not taking their culture away?" He says, "Well, how we'll do that is bring them down to the City Hall, get them in, let them see the fact that within the building there's 3 Union flags hanging every day. You know, there's portraits to any number of British royals. There's plaques to a whole cadre of British Army regiments, stained glass windows to the RUC, the UDR, you know, organisations that murdered people in this community and all over the north. You know, there's no way their culture's being eroded." So what unionism and what loyalism needs to do is stop sensationalising. Is stop taking their people, what we would say in Belfast, stop putting them on a bum steer. You know, stop leading them up the garden path. Because what I would be concerned about is that we've come through this, and as I said, many figures within loyalism are questioning some of the initiatives taken by unionist leaders. But you see people like Peter Robinson and their leadership within Belfast City Hall, they're still not preparing the groundwork for the more change that's coming down the line. And there is more change coming. There's more changes to City Hall that's going to happen, and I think needs to happen. And instead of preparing their people for that, instead of explaining and rationalising and including their people in that process, in typical fashion, they're banging a big drum and they're marching their people right up to the top of the hill. And just like the Grand Old Duke of York, they're going to have to march them back down again. And that's what we've seen over the past couple of months. Unfortunately, this community's been at the butt end of their hysteria and their violence. But like we've done in the past, we've come through it. It's been hard. It's another generation of kids and young people that have experienced that butt end, as I said, of loyalistic rising. And also, there are big questions around the whole policing operation, the facilitation for 3 months of illegal parades, what implications that has for the summer months, particularly in Ardoyne. I mean, the immediate contrast for everyone was the fact that loyalists were able to block roads night after night for months on end, and people sat down to block a road in Ardoyne and were trailed off the road last year. You know, so it's all of the implications going into that. This community and people in this room met with some of the most senior PSNI figures just a couple of weeks ago, and outlined very, very strongly the anger, the frustration, the hurt, the stress that this community was being put under. And I think we've begun to see a change in the policing approach to the parades and the general issue. The point that's important to make is that at the minute there's a Short Strand resident who has taken a judicial review against the policing operation. So that is an avenue that's open to them, a legal avenue that's open to them in terms of getting judicial or legal clarity in relation to the obligations of the PSNI law. Because as I've said to you, a lot of the cops have been saying to us, well, this isn't just as black and white as you think. There's competing legislation, you know, the right to march against the right to this and that and free assembly and all the rest of it. And our fundamental point from the start has been, yeah, but what about our rights? What about our rights under the Good Friday Agreement to live free from sectarian harassment? That was the tagline of the agreement. We all had the right to live free from sectarian harassment. People in this community have been looking at mass towards passing this community and going on the rampage, sometimes weekly. So, I mean, the person who's taken that judicial review, I mean, I would commend them. They're very, very brave. I think it's very, very necessary. It's very, very unfortunate it had to come to that at the end. And it has been put back by the judge and put back, and I think the judge concerned is actually a wee bit unwilling or certainly frightened to deal with the issue, and is hoping that this will fizzle out. But now has left into a climate whereby we're heading into the summer, and we still don't have a clear sort of legal understanding of where things are at. So I said I wasn't going to talk for very long, but in typical fashion I did talk very, very long. If anybody has any questions, if there's anybody else in the Short Strand group want to add anything to what I've said, feel free. But I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, if there's any questions in relation to Sinn Féin, in relation to the Republican project in the city or beyond at the minute, I'll do my best to answer them. But I'm conscious that you'll be meeting people who will be much better placed to answer the questions than me. I'm only a lowly city councillor, and happy I am to be. But the floor is yours, guys. So yeah.